Even though this is my favorite type of video to make, I have to say that I'm a little weirded out by this one. I mean, Michael Jackson versus Elvis Presley. How do I even approach this? Listen, I think that we can all agree here that both Michael and Elvis are undisputed legends that were very impactful, very influential. The problem here is that one is known for revolutionizing rock music in the 50s and the other one is known for doing the exact same thing in the 80s with pop music. That's two very different things, so making a side-by-side comparison can be kind of complex and tacky. But that is precisely the reason why I thought maybe this will be a really fun idea, because more complexity means more comments, more opinions, more debate, and that is exactly what I want from you guys. I want you to leave me your opinion down below in case you disagree with anything I say. If you guys don't know, in order to decide who wins, we use 4 different categories. That is going to be popularity, influence, performance, and discography. Based on who gets the point in each category, we pick a winner at the very end of the video. Now that I've explained the rules, I don't really want to make this intro too long, so let's just go on with the first category, popularity. Alright, so as I say in every single one of these videos, popularity, in my opinion, is the most irrelevant category. I don't really care how much you sold, I don't really care how many people know about you, or how many streams you have a month. You know, for me, if the music is good, that's all I need. However, when we're talking about Michael Jackson and Elvis Presley, things get a lot more exciting because we're not only talking about A-list celebrities here, we're talking about 2 of the most popular humans to ever exist. And to be fully honest, there's no right answer. Deciding who's more popular between the 2 is almost impossible, mainly because a lot of people argue that Michael Jackson was more well known than Elvis, but also Elvis didn't have all the tools that Michael Jackson had in the 80s to promote his music and his own public image, you know, and that is totally right. But still, there were only a few places in the 60s where you could go and Elvis was not playing, or he wasn't recognized on sight, or when people listened to his music, you know, and that is quite an achievement. The only thing that was more popular than Elvis in the 60s was the Beatles, which is the most popular music phenomenon of all time. So that speaks volumes for the level of popularity he enjoyed. But Michael Jackson, I mean, let's be honest here, guys. The man was on the news every week for like 3 decades, you know, and a lot of people say that that had a lot to do with his controversies, not really his music. And you'd be right, you know, his controversies definitely put him in the spotlight for quite a few years. But I personally believe that even in the 80s, before all these, you know, allegations were made, I'm not going to get into it, he was still the biggest star in the world. And we must not ignore something I've said before too. Michael Jackson has the best-selling album of all time with Thriller, selling over 70 million records. So based on the achievements of both of them, I have to say that this would be a draw, but it's only a draw when you look at the US, you know, and other English-speaking countries, because once you go to South America and a lot of places in Europe that don't speak English, Michael Jackson was simply way bigger than Elvis, you know, because of the type of music he liked to make, because of the fact that he toured all over the world, unlike Elvis, who only stayed in the US for the most part. You know, it's clear that Michael Jackson was a worldwide phenomenon, while Elvis was more something that happened in the land of the free and stayed in the land of the free. You know, right now, thanks to streaming and thanks to social media, Elvis is known all over the world. Not as much as Michael Jackson, but he has clearly had a massive impact in other places other than the US too. But if we were to compare their popularity at their peak, I have to say that Michael Jackson was simply known the world over, while Elvis Presley was mostly known in the US only. You know, once you left the land of the free in the 60s, there weren't a lot of people talking about Elvis, and that's the main reason why I'm giving the point to Michael Jackson. Alright, so we have another super complicated category here, because this question cannot be answered through normal means. Elvis is one of the most influential artists of the 50s and the 60s. His self-titled releases in 1956 are one of the most influential pieces of music ever made. It inspired people like the Beatles, Elton John, the Rolling Stones, Bruce Springsteen. All of these different artists put Elvis at the very peak of their influences, so naturally it would be really easy for me to give Elvis the point in this category. However, Elvis had a different type of influence. You know, it wasn't based on music, it was mostly based on how he used the music to market his own public image. You have the Thriller video being the first time a video had such a massive production behind it. It was incredibly influential at the time, and without it, I'm pretty sure we wouldn't have all the amazing videos that were released in the 80s. Then you have the theatrical and choreographed nature of his live performances that was not seen at the time. It wasn't often that you saw an artist put on such a show for the people. So I guess you could say that both of them were really influential in different sides of music, equally influential, I would say. But Michael was more influential on the industry side of things, you know, on the business, the audiovisuals, ways to promote your music in a more effective way. Elvis, on the other hand, was more seeing music as an art form. He created a more melodic melodic but equally chaotic version of rock music that inspired people like the Beatles and branched out into so many different genres of music that clouded the 60s and created the most revolutionary decade of the history of music. And precisely for that reason, I'm going to give the point to Elvis, because music is about revolutions, it's about innovation, it's about creating something new, and almost every single revolution that music saw in the 60s, 70s, and 80s can be traced back to Elvis. So even if Michael was incredibly influential too, Elvis's contributions were based on artistry, and precisely for that reason, I think they were more significant, at least for me. So he takes a point in this category. All right, so the next category is performance, but before we get into it, I would like to explain that in my opinion, performance does not only entail vocal skill. It's definitely important, very important, but you need more than that. Passion, versatility, creativity, and emotion, all of these different things are equally important in order to be a good performer. And when it comes to Michael Jackson and Elvis Presley, things are very, very tight as well. So let's start with Elvis. I mean, the guy is called the King of Rock for a reason. He definitely knows how to rock, but also his voice can be very, very tender and beautiful and romantic, filled with passion. One of my favorite performances from him is his interpretation of Are You Lonesome Tonight in the comeback special. The way that he changes from his beautiful, breathy vocals to his powerful, tenor quality chest voice with so much intensity is amazing. It's not only amazing from the point of view of a listener, but I'm someone that sings quite well, and I can tell you that it's very complicated to replicate that level of, change in the nature of your voice. He offered a multitude of versions of songs like Burning Love, Suspicious Minds, Can't Help Falling in Love, Love Me Tender, the American Trilogy during his time in Las Vegas. It is such ear candy listening to the guy change notes and twist a few vocal runs in order to make every performance feel different from the last one. He was performing 13 shows a night during this time of his life, and he was still delivering in every single one of them. I mean, he is an amazing performer. His voice has such a level of passion. Listen to his performance of If I Can Dream. I mean, there's very few artists that can make me feel goosebumps every time I listen to a song, and Elvis manages to do that with his interpretation of that beautiful song. So much passion, so much emotion, and I'm really inclined to give him the point in this category, because if we exclude Paul McCartney, he is definitely among my favorite performers of all time. The problem here is the fact that Michael Jackson is the contender, and he is also an incredible performer, one of the best singers of all time. If you were to ask me, I believe that Michael Jackson is a better technical singer than someone like Freddie Mercury, for example, often held as the greatest singer to ever live. Try and Google covers of songs like Beat It, Thriller, The Way You Make Me Feel, and you're going to find that most of them are pitched down because people cannot reach the same notes as Michael. His range was insane, and that gives him quite a few points over Elvis, because in terms of vocal skill, Michael Jackson mops the floor with Elvis. And I don't mean this as disrespect for Elvis. Michael Jackson is simply one of the greatest singers of all time. His technical ability was not only great, but his creativity, his beatbox, the ad-libs he liked to add to the song to adorn the instrumentation, every single detail that entails a Michael Jackson performance. It's like a little fairy in my ear telling me that Michael should be the one getting the point in this category, and I kind of agree. Michael is an overall better performer from all the technical points of view than Elvis Presley. So Elvis is my favorite out of the two, but Michael has all the cards to take the point in this category. But giving the point to one or the other just doesn't sit well with me. It doesn't feel right, So even though I hate doing this, believe me, I've given it a lot of thought, I have to leave it as a draw. I don't like doing this because it shows that I'm a little biased, but it's what my heart tells me to do, so each of them get a point. So given that they each have 2 points, this is going to be the category that decides the winner, and honestly, it's kind of fitting. I mean, I've said it multiple times every time I do one of these videos. For me, this is the most important category by far. Your albums, the songs in them, the singles, every piece of music you ever release, that's where your discography entails. So naturally, this is the most significant category, and this time around is a little bit unfortunate because the answer is clear. Elvis Presley has one of the most important discographies in the history of music. In the 50s, he released quite a few albums that were super impactful and that inspired a whole generation of musicians in the 60s that went on to make amazing music. The problem here is that after the 50s, he released quite a few questionable albums that suffered from a great creative decline thanks to his time as a movie star. He wasn't a singer anymore, he was an actor. He did come back after that in 1967 with How Great Thou Art and albums like From Elvis in Memphis in 1968, my personal favorite, but immediately after that, he went into his Las Vegas era and released a bunch of recycled albums that no one really cared about. They sold pretty well, but again, it's mostly mostly because it's Elvis, not because the albums were good. Michael at first was not all that different because his Motown era is something that I do not enjoy. I've said it in multiple videos. Albums like Ben and Music and Me are not something that I like to listen to. However, after he released Off the Wall, I would go as far as to say that he didn't release a single bad piece of music after that, including Invincible. I really enjoyed that album and I think it's very underrated. I mean, Dangerous, Bad, Thriller, Off the Wall, every single one of these albums is often ranked high up there with the best pieces of music ever made, and this is no exaggeration. The lustrous and glamorous nature of his voice and his personality were the blueprint of every single pop star of the 2000s and the 2010s. The impact this album's had in the music industry cannot be overstated. We also need to add a few extra points here to Michael because he was very involved with the writing, the production, the engineering, and the instrumentation of every single one of his projects. Actually, even in the music videos, he was involved with the direction of the whole thing. Elvis, on the other hand, especially when it comes to his time in Las Vegas, he just got in the studio, recorded the songs, and then let the production and, the marketing team handle all of it. Which is one of the main reasons why his discography in the 70s and 60s and his public image in a lot of these album covers feels really shallow. It was basically a practice to sell more albums, not to create anything new, not to grow as an artist. And that is the reason why the undisputable winner of this category has to be Michael Jackson. His discography was filled with charisma and personality. Elvis's discography was only Elvis in terms of vocals and, the fact that it was his voice. So even though Elvis had a really impressive discography in the 50s and the early 60s, I have to say that once you dive deep into the 60s and the 70s, it becomes really shallow and uninspired. So that's the reason why Michael Jackson takes the point. Alright, so based on the scoreboard, Michael Jackson has 3 points and Elvis Presley has 2. So that means that we have an undisputable winner. Now, if you personally believe that Elvis should be the one taking the win in this video, not only do I understand why you would say that, but I kind of agree. I have to be honest, jumping into this video, I thought that Elvis Presley was going to be the winner. So why am I giving the victory to Michael Jackson? Even though I have nothing but praise for Elvis and his legacy, I cannot look away from the fact that his discography is a mess. If you take away the soundtracks, if you take away the recycled stuff in the 70s, he would definitely be taking the win in this video, but your lowest points are also part of your history, and when it comes to Michael Jackson, his lowest points don't even have anything to do with music. When it comes to his artistry, he was always at peak condition, releasing great album after great album, great performance after great performance, and overall his consistency and his constant creativity and ability to evolve and do new stuff with every single release is the reason why I believe he is the rightful winner of this video. Even though I rather Elvis, even though if I take the peak of Elvis and the peak of Michael Jackson, I believe that he would be the one taking the win, I cannot ignore that consistency is a massive factor when it comes to picking a winner on who's the better artist overall. So if you were to ask me out of the two, which one's your favorite, I would definitely say Elvis. But if the question is who's the rightful winner of this video, without any doubts in my mind, the answer is Michael Jackson. However, that is only my personal opinion, so if you have your own, and I'm pretty sure you do, you can go ahead and leave it down below in the comments. I'll make sure to read it and give you my opinion on your opinion. I truly hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, you can leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any other videos that I upload. If you want me to talk about any other topics related to music, if you want me to check out a song, album, or artist, leave it down below as well, and I'll make sure to fulfill your requests as soon as I can. Once again, I hope that you guys enjoyed, and I hope that I can see you soon with a new video. But until then, bye.